So there are a few things that I take into consideration every time I make a new piece, and I'm going to go over them really quick here. This is not a tutorial on how to do those things. These are just the things that I always think about when I'm creating a piece, because I get asked this a lot in the Artist Alley online. So I am talking specifically about the pieces that I sell at conventions or in my online store, you know, my finished pieces, and not so much the sketches I have online or the freestyle sketches we do here on YouTube. I'm talking about finished full illustrations. All right, so the most important thing to me is always going to be composition. Now, what is composition? It's basically how you're going to set up your drawing in order for it to be visually appealing. I'm going to be using the word visually appealing a lot, and I'm going to be breaking that down into like the little subsections what I mean by that. So like the composition is how you're going to determine how your viewer is going to view your drawing. It's up to you to structure your drawing in a way where you can guide their eye to go where you want it to go. So for example, you don't want their eye trailing off the right side of the page. So we read from left to right, at least I do. We go from left to right, and when they've scanned your entire drawing and then they go to the end of the page on the far right hand side, often I will use something like a barrier, a building, a car, a rock to close off the edge of the page so that it stops them from going out there, and I can keep their focus on the inside of the page. That's like a basic photography thing, and a lot of composition that I use is based in photography and cinematography. That's why a lot of my drawings look like they're just pulled images out of a movie, because I love movies and I apply that to all my illustrations, which is why I work in landscape. I find it's much easier to compose a shot, especially if you're trying to tell a story, and I'll get more into storytelling in about a minute. It's easier to compose a shot and tell a story and lay everything out horizontally or landscape, because that is how we see the world through our own eyes. You may not notice it, but your brain does. That's how you are seeing everything right now. Landscape, widescreen. Okay, so storytelling. You always want your drawing to tell some type of story, you know, and I'm not trying to bash on anyone, but single character pinup is fun. It's nice to look at, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really say anything. It doesn't tell a story. Usually it doesn't. So that's why I would much rather do something like two guys sitting in a car, you know, slice of life, but show it in a visually appealing way. So it's two guys sitting in the car, one guy's yawning, they both look tired. There's an empty energy drink can in the cup holder, the window's open, and it's really bright outside. So you just get the feel that they've been driving for a really long time and they're tired. That is storytelling. You don't need to have a giant explosion in the background, a guy running, and a bunch of cops chasing them shooting guns. Like, that is storytelling, but it doesn't need to be that extreme all the time. You could wonder why I draw a lot of characters in the background smoking. You know, people ask me that a lot. They're like, how come you're always drawing people smoking? And I'm like, well, that just adds like a little extra dynamic to my background characters. There's a rule in comic book art where you don't want your background characters to be boring and static, or you need them to be doing something. Like, you want to fill the world with people, right? And that will expand the world of your drawing, even if it's a single frame isolated illustration, right? So what I like to do is I like to have characters maybe tilt their head, because tilting your head is a sign of interest. Tilt their head, having a cigarette. To me, while people don't like cigarettes, rightfully so, to me the cigarette could represent 1, somebody's just taking a break from work, 2, somebody's stressed, 3, somebody's happy, 4, somebody could be socializing, or there's like, it could be interpreted in so many ways. That's why I choose to put cigarettes in people's hands, because it can be interpreted so many ways and it could mean so many different things to so many different people. That's why you'll find my background characters smoking. I give them something to do and it expands my world. You may not notice these things, but your brain will. The viewer will look at what's going on and they'll know, oh hey, it's a bigger world out there in this drawing. I also like to work in all grayscale. The only reason I like grayscale, there are 2 main reasons I like to work in grayscale. 1, it accentuates my line work. My line work is my strongest suit. It is the best attribute that I have. So going grayscale pushes that. I admitted to myself, you know what, I'm really good at line work and that's my best thing, so I doubled down on that, and that's why I shade in grayscale. And the second reason I do grayscale is when I'm in the Artist Alley and I have my display up, all my posters are gray, because there's so much oversaturation in color and just like shit everywhere in the artist alley. Not shit in a bad way, just like there's so much color and vibrancy. And now people are putting like hollow foil on their prints, and it's just this escalation of attention grabbing flair. The fact that I scrolled back on that and it's just very monotone. It's just, well, it's not monotone, but it's very flat. It actually pulls a lot of attention. I have a buddy named Robot Cat. His artwork is very similar in the way he colors it. It's very minimalistic, but his style, the inking that he does, the minimalistic colors that he uses really accentuates that, and it works. And his booth will grab your attention the same way my booth will grab it, and we're both using minimalistic techniques. So going back to composition, the last thing I want to say is, if you're unfamiliar with like the rule of thirds or the golden ratio, quote, quote, or just how to put something in the foreground, the midground, and the background in order to bring attention to your subject, go look up photography tutorials. Go look up art composition tutorials. Cycra here on YouTube has a great tutorial on that. Dutch angles are a good way to make things more exciting with your compositions. And these are all very basic things that either people that I've come across, either they don't know or they know it and they're not executing on it. And it will make a world of difference in the way your drawing is absorbed by the viewer. And honestly, I'm not even that experienced with it, but I've applied the things that I've learned, and it has made my drawing stand out. It has started conversations with people because they see, is this part of a story? I hear that all the time. Is this part of a story? Are you a storyboard artist? What does this mean? What's this world? And that's what you want to hear. That's what you want to do to engage your viewer. And you don't want, yo, that Harley Quinn's really hot, or half her tits are hanging out. You know, like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I just want more from my drawings. And in regards to getting your subject to stand out in your drawing, I like to use a little bit of splash of color. Pink is my favorite color. So I will use that in any particular drawing to get the attention pulled to where that color is. Now, when I step back and I look at all the drawings, instead of looking at everything as an individual drawing, if you look at everything as a total body of work, and I put all my prints up on the wall, every print will have some little splash of color. And once they realize that that splash is where their attention is supposed to be, once you have a whole wall up, they're going to know every single time they see that, that's where their eye should go. So it's another form of manipulating your viewer through your composition to get them to look where you want them to look. Now, this is just a personal thing that I do. I like to draw cars because that is a demographic that is underserved in the convention circuit, which is where I make most of my money. But that comes from a genuine place because I used to work on cars. That used to be my career. So that comes from a genuine place for me. And that's why I like to put it in there. I always just put it in the background. I never let it dominate the drawing usually. And it's just something that whoever likes the drawing, who's not a car person, they won't notice it and won't make a difference to them. But people who do like cars, they'll notice it and be like, hey, that's an SI there. That's an FRS right there, you know? And that is a little strategy that I use. So maybe find something that you really like if you're into technology, you can, if somebody has like a phone, do a specific phone, you know, something subtle, almost to the Easter egg level, something subtle, and you never know if it could spark conversation with someone, you know. You don't have to put a generic computer every single time, you know. Another thing is that I like to make machines and robots in what I do. The difference is I never push my technology and my robots to the point where it's so futuristic that it's sci-fi and it's untangible and unrelatable, and sometimes it gets a little sterile. I like to integrate robots and machines that are very futuristic into our current world. That's why I make a point to draw a lot of wood in a lot of wood in the things that I draw. That way, when I integrate the robots there, it's like, okay, it's just a little bit in the future, but they're robots, but I could totally feel this still. I can relate it. And I think being able to relate to a drawing is the biggest reason I sell my original pieces. Like I said before, two guys driving in a car, yawning and being tired is infinitely more relatable than a picture of like a super buff superhero just standing there. And again, nothing wrong with that if you execute it really well. But what I'm saying is, for me, the reason that mine are doing so much better than my old fan art pinup stuff is because my work is relatable now. Slice of life always works. Just present it in a visually appealing way, maybe with a 5-point perspective. 5-point perspective is always, just in general, a really, really fun, visually appealing thing that you can do. And it's not hard. It's not. Go get Scott Robertson's book, How to Draw. It's in there. Don't let the idea of it scare you. Figure out the technical way to do it. Demystify it for yourself, and then execute on it. And then you'll be doing better. You'll be happy. It's another technique to understand. So yeah, I just like to have everything a little bit more grounded in reality. I make things relatable. I apply the most basic technical aspects of art, whether that's, composition, storytelling, and even with my human design, I like to go the opposite way rather than drawing somebody who's, I want to say, comic book proportions. I just draw regular people. Like, they're kind of flubby. They got rolls when they sit down. They're old. I draw a lot of old people. Nobody's too beautiful. It's just as relatable as I can get is basically the goal when I make my stuff. So that's it. That's seriously the main thought process behind all my drawings. That's it. If you guys have any questions, if you found this helpful, if I maybe skipped anything, if you have any more concerns or questions, please let me know in the comments and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye.